Hi, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful session. We are super excited for you to be here with us today. We have a great presenter, and I'm excited to introduce her. Today, we have with us Dr. Marci Clark. She's an assistant professor in the Bachelor's of Early Childhood Education program. She also supports work in the Department of Education and Liberal Arts, the Professional Development Committee, and Dr. Clark received an EDD in Curriculum Instruction, a master's degree in Adult Education and Professional Training, and a bachelor's degree in Elementary Education with an Early Childhood endorsement. Dr. Clark taught 12 graduate level language reading and culture hours at the National Writing Project, LRC, Summer Institute at the University of Arizona. She holds a current state of Florida teaching certificate with early childhood and ESOL endorsements, and she spent over 17 years teaching early elementary grades before transitioning into higher education, and we are so happy to have her. So next slide, please. I'm going to give you just a moment to take a glance at this slide. Next slide, please. One last disclaimer from UAGC. And Dr. Clark, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here and to have the chance to present. I am wonderfully honored by you, Dr. Shipley, to invite me again after being on your podcast, which was amazing. And I just wanted to again show my gratitude and say thank you for inviting me to come on. Thank you so much. So let's get started. I'd like to give you just a brief background introduction so you can have a better idea of who I am and how I got here. My name, as already told by Dr. Shipley, my name is Dr. Marci Clark, and I lived in Arizona most of my life. I went to kindergarten and finished with a bachelor's degree there from the University of Arizona with an early childhood endorsement. I didn't start college until I was 33, so that's a little bit out of the ordinary. I landed my first job teaching kindergarten and never looked back. 10 years later, my husband and I moved to Italy, where teaching jobs for Americans were hard to come by. I decided to go back to school so I could get my master's degree in adult education and professional training. And wouldn't you know it, shortly after I started classes, I was hired by the Department of Defense to teach first grade. So 3 years later, I had my master's. We moved back to the States, and my husband retired from the Air Force. We decided to drop anchor in Florida, where I found a great doctorate program in curriculum and instruction. And that was from the University of Central Florida. After getting my doctorate from UCF, in a perfect circle of life, I started teaching again back at the University of Arizona Global Campus. So the picture you see in the hangar is a picture of my family at my husband's retirement. My youngest son is in arms and my oldest son is standing behind me. We're very lucky to have two very wonderful boys that we love spending time with. So let's go ahead and talk about the very beginning of my teaching career. So when I first finished my teacher preparation program at the U of A, I was beyond excited to start teaching. I was fresh out of teacher preparation program. I felt well equipped to take on the world of elementary education. I had learned theories and strategies and developmentally appropriate practices. I was confident in my ability to be patient and kind with every student, and I was cognizant of how to be culturally sensitive and diverse when creating lesson plans and learning centers and small group instruction. However, I learned by experience that there were areas I was not quite prepared for. So many times, those first days of teaching in your first official job as an early childhood educator, they're not what you might have imagined, but that is only because some things are best taught through experience. So in today's presentation, I want to share some of those experiential secrets to help you better prepare for the unknown. Let's talk a little about some areas that may not have been covered extensively in textbooks. So in the first couple of weeks of my first teaching job, I encountered experiences I had not anticipated. What I was not fully prepared for were those few situations that are better taught through experience. So in this presentation, we'll discuss a few areas new to educators that may run across when you first start teaching. In my case, it was kindergarten. And hopefully you can learn from my stories. So in our teacher preparation programs, we're taught to differentiate instruction, adjust lesson times, and employ developmentally appropriate practices. We know we will be adjusting and changing activities often, but one thing that cannot be stressed enough is the benefits of establishing basic classroom operations and expectations at the beginning of the school year. Simple things like classroom setup, teaching basic definitions, and establishing routines can really increase student learning. Children feel more confident and secure when their daily activities are predictable and familiar. So creating a safe, peaceful environment helps children feel safe, develop life skills, and build healthy habits. But one of the best instructional gifts I can give you is to emphasize the benefits of establishing basic classroom operations at the beginning of the year. Let's consider for a moment the spaces students learn in. We know it's important to ensure children's health and safety. One way we need to do this is by carefully setting up the classroom. Let me tell you about my first classroom setup. I had one day to set up my classroom. I had never done it before, but I had an idea of what I wanted it to look like. I had colorful alphabet posters for the walls, name tags with numbers from 1 to 10 in English and Spanish, job charts to include the students in daily helper activities, and colorful caddies for centers of each table. Each caddy, I put 5 pairs of child-safe scissors, 5 boxes of brand new crayons, 5 sharpened pencils, and 5 jumbo pink erasers. I had spent hours arranging the class library books from large to small, fiction and nonfiction. The room looked like a picture out of a preschool brochure. This is what my classroom looked like 2 days before school started. I walked in, I was a little overwhelmed, and I had a lot of organizing to do. This is what it looked like after I visited other teachers' classrooms to borrow ideas and arrange my space in a way that I thought looked good. It looks pretty good, definitely different from the day before. Let me tell you, how a classroom looks and how it functions are 2 different things. So, first story. On the first day of school, I opened the door to greet 24 excited, scared, and energetic kindergartners. They were prepared with bright colored character backpacks and lunch boxes and adorable first day of school outfits. They ran into the class and spread like hot melting butter. Some went for the books, some went to the tables, and many took out all of the new supplies in the table caddies. It was chaos. I didn't know how to wrangle them up, and I finally gained their attention by grabbing a book off the shelf and asking them to join me on the carpet for story time. The picture-perfect classroom setup was a crazy mess, and I was scrambling mentally to figure out how to get them safely back to their seats after story time with all the enticing tools spread around the classroom. The moral of my story is to intentionally consider the choices we give new students. Giving children limited choices, it's important. When children have choices, they feel more in control and they get less frustrated. But in the reverse of that concept, giving students too many choices without proper education can cause chaos, confusion, or even meltdowns. My suggestion would be to introduce one thing at a time. Leave the caddies empty until the students know where they sit and when they can use class supplies. Don't hand out scissors until there's been a detailed lesson on the safe use of scissors. All of these mini lessons, they take time. Don't be afraid to take that time. Your lesson plans will still be there when you're done teaching the basics. Or better yet, include teaching basics in your first 2 weeks of lesson plans. Speaking of basics, what besides school supplies do new students need to know to be safe and successful? Do they know what a line is? Do they know how to use scissors? How will they know when they can use them? Practice and modeling will be your best friend at the beginning of school. It's hard to think, but we really shouldn't assume students know the definition of all the terms that we're familiar with that are associated with school. Back to the concept, do students know what a line is? How do we teach them? Do we draw it on the board? How do they understand how to get in a line? We need to model it. So, for example, I would choose 3 students to help you show the class how to line up in a straight line. Slowly, one at a time, have students stand one behind the other. Stop the lesson if a student is not in the correct or optimal position. Make it a teachable moment. Have students help figure out how to correct the line. Then start all over again with 3 different volunteers until all the students who want to participate have had a chance to do so. Now, this may sound like a long, time-consuming basic lesson, but it's necessary to help students feel confident in their ability to follow directions and help keep the classroom a safe place. There'll be several times throughout the day when children are transitioning. They're not familiar with transitions. They'll go from one activity or area of the room to another. And so it's important to have a plan for these transitions. Speaking of transitions, let me tell you another short story about my first week of teaching. So, the first week of my first job as a teacher, I had 24 students and no teaching assistants. The instructional coach at the site had told me to practice the fire drill procedures with the students to make sure they knew what to do, where to go, and all that. I had so many things on my plate. I didn't get a chance, or should I say, I did not prioritize modeling the fire drill procedure. Sure enough, the drill alarm went off. The students screamed, grabbed their ears, some cheered. All of them were jumping up and down. I tried quickly lining them up, but we had not practiced getting in line enough to be able to master it for a fire drill. The entire school made it to the perimeter of the playground before I had exited the building with my 24 hyped up kindergarten students. I had managed to get them to follow each other outside in a line that resembled a stretched out slinky. I told the first student in line to walk to the fence by the other classes. Well, he followed directions, but I did not specify how fast or what route to take. He took off with his arms in the air like an airplane and zigzagged his way to the fence. The others ran to keep up with him. I fell back to monitor the end of the line and lost control of the front of the line. I yelled out the leader's name and I said, "Stop." He listened and he stopped on a dime. Well, the rest of the students tumbled over each other like dominoes as the entire school watched the new teacher's class fall, cry, squeal, tumble, and roll in the grass until they stopped. Not only was my confidence shattered, the students could have been hurt. Thankfully, all was well except my ego. So because young children need to know what's coming next, it's important to attend to the transitions between activities. Lesson plans for the first days of school can be ambitious, but remember to include time for the basics. Establish routines with routines. Directly teach the sequences using fun activities such as puppets or role playing with adults purposefully making mistakes, and have the children take turns modeling for each other. Make sure all the children have an opportunity to practice behavioral expectations each day, and practice expectations beforehand, because practicing after rule infractions may be perceived as punitive by your students. Much like a stand-up comedian, we need to be able to read the room and know when to continue to explain and when to move on. We can always circle back around after giving the students a brain break, because their cognitive capacity can get overloaded quickly with all the new information. Are you starting to see how teaching first day procedures can turn into a 2-week lesson plan? It takes time and repetition for the students to master these new skills. Speaking of transitions, let me tell you another story about my first days teaching. So the students were rambunctious, as most kindergartners are, and they were loud right before lunch. I tried to regain their attention, but they were too far gone to listen to my polite requests. So I did what I swore I would never do. I turned into that dreaded elementary school teacher who turned off the lights while sternly telling the students to put their heads down at their seats. In my frustration, I told them, "It's time for lunch, but we're not going until you're quiet." The room quieted and they sat with their heads down. What felt like eternity to my kindergartners, for about really 20 seconds of silence, when one little boy raised his hand. I called on him and he tearfully declared, "Miss Clark, I'm allergic to not eating." Oh, goodness. Needless to say, I lined them up with a big smile on my face and we all went to lunch. But It broke my heart. Routines and schedules are important because they influence a child's emotional, cognitive, and social development. They help children feel secure. They help children understand expectations. They help reduce behavior problems. They can result in higher rates of child engagement. Consistent routines help foster learning by eliminating distractions and keeping students in sync with their activities and each other. As new educators, we think the beginning of school will involve instruction, lunch breaks, and regrouping during recess or playground time. But the truth is, during those first couple of weeks, the first week at the very least, we need to stay with our students for the entire 7.5 or 8 hours of instructional day. It sounds really daunting, but students need to see, practice, model, and master routines, and we are responsible for those masteries. The lunch staff and the playground monitors are establishing routines of their own to best support our students and the support staff at our learning institutions. We need to stick with our students until they are comfortable and familiar with routines school-wide. Of course, these are merely my suggestions, and they're not usually required by your workplace, but investing the time at the beginning of the year will yield great results for us and the other staff, and of course, the students. I always strongly suggest shadowing your students the entire day for the first week. I know I've covered quite a few ideas concerning the first days of teaching, so let's just recap quickly. If you take anything away from this session, I hope you'll remember to intentionally set up your classroom with the early childhood learner limited knowledge of class tools or processes in mind. They don't know the things that we're so used to. It's funny that one time I was teaching a thematic unit on Thanksgiving, and I had to realize that out of the 5 years these students had been alive, 3 of those years they were babies, and the other 2 wasn't enough time to understand what Thanksgiving and eating turkey was all about. It's the same way with processes in school. So introduce one thing at a time. It might feel sluggish and slow, but it is worth the investment. Be patient with the learning process. 80% of the process is new to them. Also, repeat the lesson in 1,000 different creative ways. Of course, I'm exaggerating, although sometimes it does feel like we repeat a lesson in 1,000 different ways. But the repetition with the differentiation is going to help them enjoy and learn and master. And last, be prepared to invest the full day with your students the first week of school, and to take your time with basic definitions the first week or 2 of a new school year. Remember, they're only introduced to school possibly in a preschool setting, possibly not. So we need to be patient and give them all the tools possible for mastering and becoming successful in their first ideas and memories of school. Before we part ways, I would like to give you another insider's gift. So Dr. Michelle Simasek did a wonderful presentation on positive discipline to manage challenging behaviors. Now, even though the beginning of school is not necessarily categorized as challenging behaviors, maybe it is, I would still encourage you to watch this presentation because it's very applicable to new teachers and to new classrooms. So take my advice, learn from my stories, and visit the YouTube channel with all of these different wonderful resources that can help you learn from our experiences. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable time with us today. And I hope that you'll benefit from the insider secrets that I've shared. And thank you again so much, Dr. Shipley, for inviting me. This was a wonderful time to share.
Dr. Clark, that was amazing as always. I've asked you to come back on camera if you can get that back on because I want everybody to see your wonderful and friendly face. That was amazing. Super work. Don't hang up, but everyone, thank you so much for being here. We're super excited that you came and there's lots more sessions to watch. See you soon.